to The Mark Cox Show. Find everything Mark Cox at 971talk.com/Cox.
Welcome back into the program. Wanted to get directly to our guest right now, Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation, a legal analyst and expert for them. Hans, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right.
I was thrilled to see this post that you put out today that on Monday a memorandum went out in the Department of Justice saying that they weren't going to give any grants to sanctuary cities. I was like many people, I was under the impression that a judge somewhere had enjoined them from doing that.
Yeah, that's because, look, it's no wonder you're confused. It's because the media really misreported this, and we're also confused by the judge in a federal case misinterpreting this. And here's what I mean. Santa Clara County and out in California and San Francisco sued the Trump administration over its executive order on sanctuary cities. And they made the false claim that the Trump administration was threatening to cut off all federal funding to sanctuary cities. Oh. By all federal funding, I mean including entitlement payments, things like Medicaid and Medicare and things like that. The federal judge in the case, an Obama appointee, similarly misinterpreted the executive order to say, oh, yeah, that's what they're planning to do. And so he issues this injunction order that got all this publicity in which everybody said, oh, the judge ordered the Trump administration to stop this and they can't cut off any federal funding. Well, if you actually looked at the final page of the judge's order, what he said was, well, the Trump administration can't cut off all any federal funding with the exception of specific grants inside the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security, which have as a condition compliance with federal law. Well, that's all the executive order was threatening to do in the first place. And so actually this injunction order by the judge allows the administration to do what it really wanted to do in the first place. And on Monday, Jeff Sessions said that's exactly what we're going to do.
So there are millions of dollars at stake here for San Francisco and L.A. and Chicago and I guess lesser amounts for smaller cities.
Yeah, the Justice Department gives out about $4.1 billion a year in discretionary grants. And by discretionary grant, what I mean is if a city wants any of these funds, they have to apply for it to the Justice Department. And the applications are for things like, they say, well, we want to improve our law enforcement capabilities, and so they apply to the Justice Department. And the Attorney General has complete discretion on who he awards the money to. And one of the requirements of an application is that the city has to certify that they're in compliance with all federal laws, which, of course, sanctuary cities are not.
Well, I'm just waiting for the temper tantrum to start because I'm guessing that many of those municipalities have not figured that out yet. They'll be back in court in a flash.
I think that's exactly right.
Well, see, you should have kept this quiet, and then nobody would have known about it.
Yeah, you're probably right. I should have done that.
Hans, speaking of sanctuary cities, I realized the other day when listening to a report on this that these sanctuary cities, their efforts are backfiring on them. I heard one report where some of the attorneys who were representing the illegal aliens were complaining that the local city had declined the ICE hold and they'd released the guy back into the public. So then ICE had to go get its agents and go raid his home, where they found not only him, but 5 or 6 of his relatives, who they also rounded up. So if they had just done the hold in the first place, it won't only have affected one person, but in effect, ICE is rounding up dozens of other people they weren't even looking for because of these sanctuary policies.
Well, yeah, that's one of the side results of this. Of course, the other result of these cities doing this is that if ICE doesn't find them and doesn't pick them up by releasing, for example, convicted criminals, they're putting them back in the community where they can victimize other Americans. That's what's so crazy about these sanctuary policies. What these cities are saying is, look, if we caught and convicted, for example, someone who assaulted another individual, they keep them in jail for a year. They are saying, well, we'd rather release this convicted criminal back into our local community. We'd rather do that than call the feds so they can come pick him up and deport him. And the results, of course, are more people are going to get, like I said, victimized by these criminals.
Sure. One more thing I hope to ask you about while I had you on here. I saw where the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals had upheld the injunction against the executive order. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's just another instance of a federal court basically ignoring the law and fantasizing about what's going on. They are claiming that the travel ban, and it's not really a ban. It's the president saying that we're going to, for 90 days, suspend entry from 6 countries, 3 of whom are official sponsors of terrorism, according to the State Department, and 3 of whom are countries of concern because of their terrorist ties. The Fourth Circuit said, no, you can't do that. We're going to allow the injunction to remain in place because it's a religious ban. Well, that, of course, is ridiculous. There are 50 countries in the world that are majority Muslim, and yet this temporary suspension of entry only picked on 3 countries, and the reasons for it were obviously national security reasons because of their ties to terrorism.
Right. So where does this go next? Does it get appealed from there up to the Supreme Court potentially?
Yes, it does. This was a case that, it's one of many from around the country. They're all going to end up before the Supreme Court. And what I'm hoping happens when the Supreme Court gets this is that you're finally going to have the Justice Department basically stomping out these lower court cases and coming out with a decision saying, look, the president has acted fully within his authority based on the law and prior precedent and throws out all of these bad decisions that we're getting from around the country.
Right. Well, boy, I sure hope so. We'll keep our fingers crossed anyway. Hans von Spakovsky from Heritage, glad we were able to get you on today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Have a great day. Appreciate that. Heritage.org for more on Hans' thoughts on this. Great news on the sanctuary city front. And now, hopefully, there's an immediate appeal to the Supreme Court. The term for the Supreme Court ends generally at the end of June, which means we have a little over a month left while they're sitting there before they recess for the summer. So this may not be decided this term. And that would mean this ban is going to stay in effect for a while, I'm afraid. Also, that means that sometime in the next few weeks, we should hear whether or not what sort of decision the court has given on the case of the church school in mid-Missouri that's suing over the right to get that grant money. So that should be an interesting decision. All right, quick break. 314-969-9797. When we come back, our brand new feature here on the Mark Cox Show, we call it The Bottom Line. I'm going to give you my bottom line on a couple of major issues of the day. Former Missouri State Senator Jeff Smith's going to join us. We'll have a rotating cast of folks in here every Thursday afternoon. Jeff Smith's going to be our first guest. He'll give you what he thinks is the bottom line from the, left side of the spectrum. How about that? Plus, of course, your phone calls. Tony Colombo will be in here with us. And something for you to do for Memorial Day weekend. We got some tips coming up next hour. We'll be right back.
This hour of the Mark Cox Show brought to you by Thomas Helbig, the official St. Louis financial advisor of the Mark Cox Show.
Well, I am excited.